It has been confirmed when Victoria Sugden's exit scenes will air, as actor Isabel Hodgins goes on maternity leave to become a mum for the first time. Hodgins has been on the show for almost 20 years, with her first episode airing in October 2006, with this being her first major break. In a new interview with The Sun, it was noted that Victoria's final scenes, for now, will air this Thursday, February 12th. "I thought I would be really emotional when I filmed my final scenes," she said. "Emmerdale is all I have ever known. But pregnancy does funny things to you, and the truth is I felt ready not to have to film on Emmerdale. I live in Manchester, and I've been driving over to Leeds to film. By the end, I felt exhausted, and I knew it was time to have a rest before the baby arrives," she added. "It suddenly feels very real now. I am so excited about becoming a mum for the first time, and this will be, by far and away, my biggest role I've ever had." Hodgins also thinks that her husband Adam Whitehead, a teacher, will be a great dad, while they are waiting until the birth to find out if they are having a boy or a girl. She also said that she felt sick early on in her pregnancy, but apart from that it's been pretty smooth sailing. "Mind you, I have had every craving," she said. "At the minute, I am craving mashed potato." Hodgins doesn't know when she expects to be back on Emmerdale, but is grateful for the soap leaving the door open for her and letting her decide when to return. And when it comes to how Victoria will leave, fleeing the village or voluntarily going to prison for killing John, Hodgins is refusing to spoil it, but did say Victoria is ready to lay on her sword. Emmerdale airs on weeknights at 8 p.m. on ITV1 and streams on ITVX. Read more Emmerdale spoilers on our dedicated homepage. The rain had a way of making the village look smaller than it really was. When the clouds sat low over the hills and the fields drank in the grey, Emmerdale felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. On the morning Victoria Sugden woke before dawn, she lay still for a long time, listening to the familiar sounds of the place she had known for almost her entire adult life. The distant hum of a car on the main road, the low creak of the house settling, the wind worrying at the trees outside. She pressed a hand to her stomach, smiling faintly. It was still early, too early for movement, but the gesture had become instinct now, a quiet conversation between her and the new life growing inside her. This was the morning, she thought. The last morning, at least for now. Victoria had always imagined that leaving would feel dramatic. There would be tears, long hugs, maybe even a moment where she stood in the middle of the village and turned in a slow circle, trying to imprint every brick and hedge into her memory. She had prepared herself for that version of goodbye. What she hadn't prepared for was how calm she felt. She swung her legs out of bed and sat for a moment, grounding herself. Pregnancy did funny things to you. She'd learned that quickly. The fear she'd expected had softened into something gentler, a readiness she hadn't known she was capable of. Emmerdale had been her whole world for so long that stepping away should have felt like stepping into nothingness. Instead, it felt like stepping into a different light. Downstairs, the kettle clicked on automatically. The kitchen was quiet, clean in that slightly forced way that suggested someone had tried to keep busy the night before. Victoria leaned against the counter, breathing in the smell of tea leaves and toast, and let memories come and go as they pleased. She thought of her first days here, a younger version of herself with sharper edges and fewer scars. She thought of laughter shared across this very table, arguments that had ended with slammed doors, and nights where she had sat alone, convinced the village itself was judging her. Every corner of the house carried a version of her past, layered one over the other like old wallpaper. Today, those layers felt less heavy. The drive out of the village was one she could have done blindfolded. She had driven it thousands of times, sometimes angry, sometimes heartbroken, sometimes full of hope. That morning, the road stretched ahead of her in a way that felt symbolic enough to be almost laughable. She shook her head at herself, one hand steady on the wheel, the other resting again on her stomach. By the time she reached the edge of the village, she slowed, more out of habit than intention. She glanced toward the familiar buildings. The pub, still closed at this hour. The shop, its windows dark. The paths where so many of her conversations had happened by accident rather than design. If she felt anything like sadness, it was quiet, tucked away behind a stronger sense of rightness. At the studio gates, everything felt strangely normal. Crew members moved with the same purposeful energy they always had, clipboards under arms, coffee cups in hand. Someone waved. Someone else asked how she was feeling. Victoria answered honestly. "Tired," she said, smiling. "But good." That answer surprised even her. Her final scenes were scheduled for later in the day, which gave her too much time to think. She sat in her dressing room, scripts spread out in front of her, and ran her fingers over the pages. She knew these lines well. She had known versions of them for weeks. Still, she read them again, searching for something new, some hidden meaning she might have missed. Victoria's exit had been written carefully, deliberately ambiguous. Would she run? Would she stay and face the consequences? The question hung in the air, unspoken but present in every conversation. She had agreed early on not to know too much herself, wanting the performance to carry a genuine uncertainty. What she did know was that Victoria, the character, was tired too. Tired of carrying guilt like a second skin. Tired of being strong when all she wanted was rest. Ready, perhaps, to lay herself down and stop fighting. When the director called her to set, the weight of that readiness settled fully into place. The scene was quiet, almost deceptively simple. No dramatic music swelled. No one shouted. Victoria stood alone, framed by the familiar backdrop of the village, and spoke words that felt both like an ending and a promise. As the cameras rolled, she felt something shift inside her. Not sadness, not relief, but a deep sense of completion. This chapter, she realized, was finished. After the final take, there was a pause. Someone called cut, and for a moment no one moved. Then applause broke out, soft at first, then louder. Victoria blinked, caught off guard by the emotion rising unexpectedly in her throat. She laughed, wiping at her eyes. "I didn't think I'd cry," she admitted, half to herself. People hugged her carefully, mindful of her pregnancy. There were jokes, promises of visits, reminders that this wasn't goodbye forever. She believed them. The door, she knew, was still open. Emmerdale wasn't closing behind her. It was simply waiting. That night, back at home, the exhaustion hit her all at once. She sank onto the sofa, shoes kicked off, and let out a long breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding for months. Manchester felt different now. Quieter. More grounded. She no longer had to think about the drive to Leeds, about early call times and late finishes. Her body thanked her for the change almost immediately. Adam came in from the other room, carrying a bowl piled high with mashed potatoes. He grinned when he saw her eyes light up. "Still craving it?" he asked. "Always," she said, laughing. "I think I might actually be turning into one." He handed her the bowl and sat. Beside her, his presence a steady comfort. They had talked about this moment so many times, imagined what life would look like once filming stopped, and the focus shifted entirely. "It feels real now," Victoria said quietly, spoon poised in midair. Adam nodded. "It is real." They sat in companionable silence for a while, the weight of the future settling gently around them. Somewhere down the line there would be sleepless nights and new routines, worries she couldn't yet imagine, and joys she couldn't yet name. For now, there was just this, rest, anticipation, and a sense of having earned both. In the days that followed, messages poured in from fans, friends, and colleagues. Some were emotional, others practical. Many asked the same question: when would she be back? Victoria didn't have an answer, and for once, that didn't bother her. She was grateful for the freedom to decide in her own time, for a workplace that understood that some roles, like motherhood, didn't follow scripts or schedules. At night, she sometimes dreamed of the village. Not in the anxious way she might have expected, but fondly. She would walk its streets, not as someone being watched, but as someone visiting an old friend. The dreams ended not with her leaving, but with her turning a corner, knowing she could return whenever she chose. As her due date crept closer, the excitement sharpened. Every small change felt monumental. She marveled at how quickly her priorities had rearranged themselves, how a place that had once defined her now sat comfortably in the background of a much bigger picture. Victoria Sugden had always been many things: survivor, sister, fighter, villager. Now, she was something else too. Something new. And somewhere in Emmerdale, the rain continued to fall, the village breathing steadily, waiting, not in sadness, but in trust, that when the time was right, she would find her way back.